Dan, how long have we known each other?
Jake, I would go so far as to say your entire life.
Did you ever think we'd be interviewing a professional comic book guy?
I gotta be honest and say no. Tim, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. This is Tim Seeley from Grayson that we covered a few episodes ago, and he covered some Nightwing, some Green Lanterns, and pretty much everything under the sun. How you been?
Or the moon.
I'm good. Like I was telling you guys earlier, I've been writing all day, and my social skills may have atrophied because everyone I've been talking to is fictional. So,
well, that's okay because I don't have any social skills.
And if I get weird, just let me know.
You are on the perfect podcast for that.
All right.
So, we're here to talk with Tim. So, our first question that we've got is one that's near and dear to my heart. What's your favorite sandwich and why?
Favorite sandwich. Okay, so I'm from Wisconsin, and they have this thing called summer sausage that, as far as I know, they really only sell there. Like you can get it in some parts of the Midwest, but that is my favorite sandwich. You just chop up some summer sausage, you put it on some bread. It's real simple. It's just so perfect. And it reminds me of growing up. On the other hand, like a good muffaletta is also, which is also not something from when I grew up, but I can also enjoy that as well.
So you just slice up this sausage and just throw it between some bread?
Yeah. I mean, it's not fancy at all, but the whole, I guess it's kind of like, Thuringer or salami, but it's distinct. And when I remember when I first moved to Chicago, I would be like, looking for summer sausage, and it's not that far from Wisconsin. People would think I was, from some faraway place because it sounded so weird, but it's very Wisconsin for some reason.
I'm going to have to write that down because,
yeah, Dan's making a database.
Yeah, I just want to know what kind of sandwiches are out there.
He's making a Wikia.
I don't know why it's called summer sausage either, but I have a feeling it's just sort of, it gets much colder in Wisconsin than even here. So I have a feeling people are just, like, taking a little bite of summer is all they really need.
Taking a little bite of summer is all I ever need. So, number 2. What is your DC origins? So, like, what was your gateway into the DC universe as a kid? However, whenever you got in.
I mean, going back even farther than comics, when I was a kid, my mom ordered me a present for Christmas, and it was these there were these little action figures that came with a Spider-Man vehicle, and I got Robin instead of Hulk. So it was like, well, actually, I got Robin instead of Spider-Man. Sorry. So I had a Spider-Mobile, and it came with the Hulk and Robin. So I was always like, who's this guy? And he was just like my fill-in for Spider-Man. But then I found a digest, which was like the greatest Batman and Robin stories or something. So it was all, like comics probably from like the 70s and early 80s, I think. So it was definitely Batman, I think, and mostly Robin. So that's probably not very unusual. And that actually worked out because then my first writing gig for DC was Robin. So it worked out pretty well.
I'm just thinking about Hulk and Robin, like, chilling out, driving the spider buggy around.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I put him in Spiral, which has a web symbol. So it's like, if you're really thinking, maybe I only had so many ideas and they all came from 5.
Oh, so if you were to, like, say who your character is in the DC universe, Who are you putting on the table?
I mean, I really like a lot of them. I think Batman is kind of so many people's go-to, and I do like Batman. But Superman is probably my favorite, just overall. Like what he stands for, what he means, his part in the history of comics, and he's just also a character I haven't gotten to work on that much. So he always he seems unattainable to me. So it's probably why I like him even more.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that at length about how we kind of grew up as big Batman guys, but like as we got older and not edgy Hot Topic kids, we were really into Superman now because he's everything you aspire to be.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty normal trajectory. When you're like, your edgelord sort of teenage rebellion phase, then a character like Batman appeals to you. But as you get older and you're more, sort of aware and maybe a little smarter, you kind of see the genius of Superman.
Oh, yeah. I don't think it helped that we grew up mainly with the Superman animated series, where he's kind of more stoic than a real nice guy.
Is he? I don't remember. I remember liking that show, but I think it was mostly because it had Kirby stuff in it. And at the time, I had never seen, Kirby stuff done and animation. So to me, it was pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah.
What was Batman is trip pants and Superman is a white t-shirt?
Yes.
Yeah. That's a motto we live by.
Yeah, you can have some weird interactions in some Hot Topics.
I don't know if we want to get down that rabbit hole, Jake.
Yeah, that's true. So, how did the entire idea for Grayson come up? Like, whose idea was it to, let's out Nightwing as Dick Grayson, kill him, then make him a spy?
I don't know who it started with. I've heard it's either Dan DiDio or Mark Doyle or some combination of both.
So what you're telling me is Dan DiDio wanted to kill Dick Grayson again, like he always wants to.
Yeah.
And someone got upset and they just settled on this.
Well, I'm not sure. So the story that Mark has told me was that, they had a storyline, they had Forever Evil, that they knew that, Dick was taken off the table. But they had some kind of meeting and they were talking about, well, let's come up with some way to do something different with him, a different genre. So I think they had talked about making him a cop. They had talked about making him all these different versions. And at some point, I think Doyle or Katie Kubert or someone said, what about doing some kind of espionage angle, some kind of spy angle? And Mark Doyle said, it sounds like it's not a Nightwing book. It sounds like it's a Grayson book. So I got a call and they said, can you pitch? It was a really short call from Katie. And it just said, can you come up with a pitch for what we should do with Dick Grayson as a spy? And we don't have any other information than that. Just that the world thinks he's dead and he's a spy. So it was like Valentine's Day weekend, I think. At the time, it was like, like a Friday or something. And I went home and I thought, man, I do not have any ideas for this. But I shared a studio with Chris Burnham, and he had designed the logo for Spiral and had done a bunch of Spiral stuff. And so I had his design sort of etched in my brain. So then I went with the Spiral angle, and also because I kind of wanted to pick up some of the ideas that Grant had laid down. So I pitched that, and then 2 weeks later they called me and said, hey, we really want you to do this. But just so you know, we also hired this other guy. So you guys have to work together. And they're like, he comes at it from a different angle because Tom had pitched like a more realistic spy thing. Based on
I'd hope so.
Yeah.
He was a spy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so he and I got on the phone and we kind of combined our stories. Like all the Spiral stuff we kept from mine. But we kept and added a lot of stuff from how Tom wanted to do kind of a out in the cold story, the spy out in the cold and using some of his own personal experiences. So we just wrote it like that. And we didn't know each other before we started the project. And we just, kind of figured out a way to work together. And it actually ended up being one of the more pleasant experiences I've had making comics.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
I still really like the book. It's still. I kind of wish they had stuck with it.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting thing to just keep going for a little while. But now he's Rick Grayson.
Yeah, I mean, but there was so much potential. Like, we had laid out so much stuff that we could have gone into, but then Rebirth came around, and it was basically just it was a marketing decision, I think, that we have to bring these characters back to a very recognizable place. So they decided to go with putting him back in the blue and black suit. So Tom moved on to Batman, and I moved on to Nightwing.
Wow. Interesting.
That's the insider story. There you go.
Got the scoop.
Ooh. All right. Next question that is written is, what attracted you to the character of Dick Grayson, and how did your perception of Dick change over time while writing him?
I mean, the thing that always appealed to me about him is that he's the normal guy in a world of gods, and he, like, his basic viewpoint is always sort of the everyman. He, when Batman or Superman does something, there's a tendency for people to look up, and Dick should be the guy that he can look you in the eye. And I just always liked that idea. Like, it humanizes superhero stories. He doesn't have powers, but he has friends. And he's a good person, which I know is maybe like a cheesy thing to to like about a character, but he's just a good person. He's not particularly tormented. He makes bad choices sometimes, like all of us do. But the idea, I think, that always drew me to him was that you could tell a superhero story, and you could do it, on a very relatable level. Like, he the way I wanted to treat it was like, okay, so he's basically like a guy out of college working his first job. And what's that like? What's that sort of making these first decisions and making these first, forays into adulthood. But of course, it's like against the backdrop of a world full of, Swamp Things and Jokers and other craziness.
Swamp Thing. Da, 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 da.
All right.
It's my turn.
It is your turn.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Man, I don't know if I have one, because my whole thing is that if you like it, there's no reason to feel guilty about it. But I honestly, I hate Twitter, but I'm constantly on it. Like, it's some kind of weird validation, kind of like linked to the outside world, and I hate it because it's so negative and it's so distracting. But like, I definitely, if I'm staring at the screen and I can't think of the next line of dialogue, I can easily find myself going to Twitter and then getting lost in that stupid rabbit hole and hating myself for it the entire time. So, it's like the only thing. And I've completely removed myself from Facebook and all the other kind of bad social media stuff, but I still get sucked into Twitter sometimes.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, I'm at work, and I'm like after a bad call, I'm like, I'm just going to sit on Twitter for like 3 minutes. And, it's 5 o'clock, and I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I try to avoid social media, but Dan just made me get on the Discord, and now I just keep checking it every 5 minutes.
God, I don't even know what that is. I mean, I'm assuming it's like Slack or something, but I don't know if I need any more of this stuff. I'm just, I'm so out of it.
It's like a
It's like a chat room.
less beautiful Slack. Like, Slack is very nice. I use it for work, so I love the design of it. But, I think Twitter is so addictive because for people like me, it gives me a doorway to talk to people like you and have good interactions and not being an asshole and saying mean things.
Which is really good at that, too.
I appreciate that kind of interaction. I mean, so much of it's just,
toxic.
Well, and that's the thing is I could avoid all that sort of stuff, but I don't. So it's an indictment of me as it is as much as all the monsters. So, but yeah, there's something about it. There's some kind of dopamine that it releases that, it's a huge problem. that it's so compelling, and also the worst parts of it are kind of what gets you. That's the part of it that that I feel guilty about.
is such a strange thing because you have an open line to so many people, and you're not supposed to be negative to any of them except like that one guy with the red hat. But
oh no,
sorry.
Well, I mean, part of it is, I just don't think we should be. I don't think you can accurately talk to that many people at the same time. I think that's part of it. It's like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of Dunbar's number, which is this evolutionary biology theory that basically humans are only able to keep in their minds about 200 faces. And after that, they start to lose sympathy for the faces. Like they can only have a contact and sympathetic reaction to like 200 people. So it's just, I think that's what it is. Like you just have too many interactions and you start to just dislike humanity in general.
I knew that theory, but now applying it to Twitter, I'm like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
See, we started talking about comic books, and this is where we ended up.
Yeah, exactly.
Jake, if you want to rein it in, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, so we're gonna have a little chit chat about art stuff. So most of us DC fans know you for your writing, but you're also an artist, right?
Yeah, I started out as a comic book artist. I drew for 10 years before I really did full-time writing.
Mm-hmm. What's more fun and what's more demanding?
It's I mean, basically what it comes down to is that drawing is more physically demanding. You're hunched over and it can be really hard on your eyes, your wrist, and your back. Mm-hmm. But most of the time it's mentally it's pretty pleasant. Like it's kind of allows for a certain amount of zen when you're drawing, especially if you're just when you're inking or like you're noodling or something. But writing is much harder, and it's much more like mentally and emotionally demanding, and it's also a much harder job to have because you have to have many more gigs. If you're drawing something, you'll have to search for one job a month. If you get on 6 issues, you don't have to look for work for 5 months. If you're writing, you have to do probably at least three, if not 4 gigs a month.
Ooh.
And if you're doing that is in a churn of every 6 months, you're looking for more stuff. It's exhausting. So, as a guy who's done both, writing is harder. Don't let anybody tell you different. But you can really, really mess your back up drawing. And it's also sort of, it doesn't get as much credit as it should. I think most fans kind of recognize the writers and the artists are sort of just filler to them. You know, they not like it, you know, it kind of goes through phases, but there were certainly eras where the artist was way more important to the reader. And now I think that's largely over.
Yeah, that's some early 90s.
Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So, stay on that little topic of art, but what's one series you'd want to do art for DC, and what's one specific like character you'd want to write?
I mean, if I could get away with just drawing something, I would definitely I'd just pick a cute girl book. So Harley Quinn would be really fun to draw because she's really expressive and you could get away with a lot. Plus, it has like some kind of gothy stuff, which I enjoy. Mm-hmm. So if I just get to draw a book, I'll do that one. That would be tons of fun. And I love drawing women. That's like the thing I used to kind of get known for before I did more writing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'd pick Harley. And then writing wise, I mean, I guess I would go to Superman too. I really would. It would be cool to do something. I think he's hard to do, but also every time I've ever done anything with him, I just really enjoyed it and inspired a lot of ideas. So I got to do him a little bit in Injustice Superman. I got to do him in Nightwing a couple times in Grayson, Injustice Masters of the Universe. But I think if I could just do like, you know, a good run on Superman, I think I would be happy with that.
Yeah, I feel like Superman would be a really rewarding book to write.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough because of all the sort of, you know, everything has been done with him. You're always, you know, trying to figure out something to surprise people, and you can't go with the usual schlocky shock thing that a lot of comic book writers use when they can't think of something to do with the character. So you can't do that with him. You have to think of something new. You have to be inventive instead of just being like, you know, let's kill a bunch of his cast and then have him get revenge, and that's so innovative. You have to do something new with him.
Yeah, I think it's hard just because he is the OG.
You
so
gotta
it's like
balance out like making something like good for him to deal with that isn't like below his pay grade.
Yeah, I mean, and I think to me that's the problem. Is I think the solution usually ends up being like we got to have a bigger, badder villain. When it's like, I mean, the things he deals with that are interesting is the fact that he's not human in a world of humans, and that he has to deal with the fact that he has to pick and choose what who he saves because he can't be on all the time. Like that's the interesting stuff. That's the conflicts you can base your run around, and then his bad guys I think are the ones that work best. Is Lex Luthor or the kind of humans that get away with stuff. Like he can't punch them down. Like they get away with stuff because of the system and all. I mean, that's how I think you do a good Superman story, and that's why the Lex Luthor stuff around the 80s when they made him like a corporate, CEO worked so well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that type of Lex Luthor. I'm also a big fan of thick Lex Luthor. I don't like the bulk, like the thin, good-looking
one where he's kind of Marlon Brando-y, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big fan of that. So the next question is a little bit.
And you have to whisper this one.
Well, yeah, because it's about the other team, the other side. We try not to talk about Marvel too much. Although, like, I'm buying probably most Marvel books that are being published right now. Okay. Where did the line "Today I am here for the meat" come from in Shatterstar? Because that panel blew me away.
I mean, like, it's probably just that. I just want to give people, like, I don't know. I mean, part of the fun of this stuff is giving people like the fun innuendo and the badass one-liners, and if you can combine them into one thing, it's even better. But to me, there's like a physicality to that character it's both that he fights and he's a sexy guy, right? I was gonna say he fights and he fucks, but I'm not sure if he can swear on his podcast. So
good.
No, as many good as you want.
But I mean, like, I kind of felt like that would be an interesting angle on him, is just showing the physicality and how he thinks of things. And like, I mean, he's used to being treated like just a product, right? Like, so I think the way he reacts to things is pretty, pretty savage and pretty base. He's very much, like he thinks of things as like meat and bones and flesh. And that's just kind of how he is.
I don't want to get too off with Shatterstar, but that book was just next level. And I have another one that just came up, Pug Smasher. Where did that come from? Like, you just knew that character coming in? Like,
well, so the idea, when I was a kid, I got one of the first Marvel comics I ever got was actually Marvel Tales, I think, which was a reprint of Marvel Team Up from the 70s. Mm-hmm. And they would run in the back Spider-Ham comics. And they were like, I loved them as a kid, and I never really understood why they existed though, right? Like, they were so weird. And they had the most ridiculous supervillain names. So like, instead of Dr. Doom, it was Doctor Doom, right? Like, that doesn't even, I don't know. Is everyone on their world who is in the medical profession called a doctor? I don't know. But like, but it always kind of just made me laugh, and I thought it was so silly. And, so I wanted to bring in a character from Spider-Ham's world, and I thought there was this character, a Captain America villain called Flag Smasher, who was like this like uber leftist terrorist, basically. And I mean, I kind of, personally, my own political views occasionally get pretty far left, and I was like, I should make fun of myself. So I thought I would use the Flag Smasher, and then just like have him say shit that I say that I'm sometimes like, what am I saying? And then but I originally was going to make him called Dog Smasher because I was going to have him make him a cat, and the idea was that he was like against these imperialist dogs, and but I was in the studio and Mike Norton had he has two pugs, and one of them was walking around just snorting and just like, having problems breathing. And I for some reason I was caught up like, oh, I'll just make him a Pug Smasher because that's funny. And I should have stuck with the Dog Smasher idea, honestly. But in the end, he got Pug Smasher, and there he is.
That and like the big finale, like wow. Yeah.
I'm glad you guys like it. I feel like that is a book that just I could not get people to give a shit about it. It's weird. I don't know. Like, I don't think Deadpool 2 helped us a ton, but like it's just
it's those weird books that are like gems, though.
I mean, yeah. It's just listen. It's weird. It's weird with Marvel because I think they, they want to use some of these characters, but they don't necessarily, they don't have it in their ability to sort of push them, and they're kind of waiting for the heat to catch. And I mean, like I put everything I had into that book, but I feel like it kind of was under the radar.
Well, I know you made something about Shatterstar fans. They're very, very avid about their character, and you made a lot of really people happy.
Yeah. And I knew kind of, I grew up reading when he first came out in X-Force and New Mutants, and I knew all that stuff, but like, I wasn't as familiar with the most recent stuff. So I went back and read that stuff after I had kind of come up with my pitch, and I read all the other stuff, and then I was like, okay, I have to combine what I know about him with what the current fans know about him, which was stuff that I didn't know. But it's still, I mean, it was fine because the basis of my pitch was, the core origin kind of the character. But then going back in and adding stuff that Peter had added and stuff that other writers had put into it, like I think it helps round it out.
Yeah, it is a masterpiece, and I have personally got many people to read it as well, just because I was like, I didn't care about Shatterstar before that book, and I don't think I really. Jake's going to be mad, but I didn't really give a shit about Dick Grayson before Grayson. And both those runs were just like, wow, why did I not read these characters before?
Well, I appreciate that. I'll take it, man. I mean, it's it's the hard thing of the job is balancing the need to bring new people in, but also make the people who have already supported it.
Yeah.
So...
If we want to, Jake, you want to round back to your boy?
Yeah. So, what was it like working with a co-writer, which you've already touched on a little bit, like on Grayson compared to working with like a big group of writers for both of the Eternal books and Age of X-Man?
Yeah.
How does the writing duties like split up, and how does it compare to writing alone?
I mean, I really like that kind of cooperative writing. We did it the first time I did it was Batman Eternal. But that was more like a writer's room, like a TV show. So, we would be in a room 3 times. We had meetings. So every 4 months we would have a meeting, and all the writers would be there. We would talk with the editors, and we would break story and assign bits of it after we'd all kind of come up with, important stuff that needed to be hit. And that was how we did Eternal as well. Whereas, Grayson was completely done. Tom and I would just call each other, and we would talk for a couple of hours about what we wanted the issues to be. We'd go by arc, and then we would split it up, and we would each take an issue. We would alternate, unless it was a longer arc, and then sometimes we would take 2. And then once one person did their version, they would send it to the other writer, and basically we would go back in and add our notes if we had any or any sort of ideas. But it was really an easy sort of jam. I knew to let Tom do his thing, and he knew to let me do my thing. And basically it only sort of benefited, I think, from having both of us do things that maybe weren't necessarily things we would have thought of on our own. So, but I think that's kind of what you always get out of those kind of collaborations. You get you basically get a new voice out of the synthesis of multiple writers.
Well, I'll break up the serious talk with, who is your ideal trapped in an elevator companion? It could be real life or a celebrity or a character.
I mean, whenever anybody asks me this, I always say Jesus, because
That's a good
I feel
one.
like we really have to figure out what you said, because people are not using it properly. So I feel like if I could corner Jesus, I could be like, what was this actually supposed to be? Because I feel like you got a bunch of assholes who have been saying this incorrectly for a really long time. And I would take out my iPhone. I would just be like recording this conversation. Then I would be posting it later. Like, hey, this is actually what Jesus said. He explained it to me. So yeah, that's the solution.
And it turns out there's just a big language barrier.
Oh, for sure. And, there's this whole sort of world of people who are like, yeah, Jesus loves guns. And like, what? No, he wouldn't love guns. Here, let me prove it to you. Jesus would not love guns. So,
Jesus, like, strapped with an AR-15. Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And there's this sort of, I would like to put some things, I could prevent so much violence and so much conflict if I could just sit with Jesus and get this shit cleared up. So I always pick Jesus in these scenarios.
Just gotta get Jesus you in a room. Jake?
Yeah, so in your Nightwing run, you brought back a lot of like Bloodhaven characters. Like you brought back the specific version of Blockbuster. You brought back some of the little, like the gangs, the thugs and everybody, but you made them a lot more nuanced, like Stallion, Thrill Devil, all of them. Well, was there anybody who you really wanted to put in the book but couldn't figure out a way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, we never got to Deathstroke. I wanted to do something with him. We wanted to use Lady Vic at some point, and just couldn't make it work. I think her origin is her original origin is kind of hard to translate into like something that works in 2017 or 18, wherever I was working on it. But I always liked the design. I thought it was kind of an interesting character. But yeah, I mean, there's a few just I could have thought of but it was a thing too, is like I would bring that stuff back and then sometimes it would be sort of like, well, why? Like I could have just made something new, and I'm sort of just doing this because it makes me entertained, but I don't know if anyone else cares.
You get to play with those characters.
About Stallion, whether he's sort of just a cheesy merc guy who, or if he's a little bit more rounded. I don't know. Does anyone give a shit? So I mean, partly I probably went overboard. It was mostly just sort of, I liked the idea, and I think it might have been, I don't remember who mentioned it first. It might have been Didio, but someone said, I think it was Dan, who said, would it be interesting if there was like an overflow of villains who were like, didn't want to be in Gotham because Batman was there, but they knew that he would never cross the county line, right? Like, so I kind of ran with that idea, which, like these guys, they were all Gotham people and they went to Bloodhaven because it was safer for them to do stuff. And then kind of played around with the idea of maybe once they were there, they kind of went, well, maybe we could turn our lives around.
Before we go to the next question, did you just call him the Didio?
No.
Didio. Okay, cool.
Dan.
Yeah, because now I'm going to call him the Didio no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, he's full of ideas. It's kind of amazing. Like, he's always got, some direction, and he throws them out. It's like Grant Morrison and Dan and Jeff. They're just these idea machines that sometimes I don't remember who said, like, well, what if we do this? Or what if we do this? Or what if we do that? And so sometimes I'm not crediting the proper idea machine.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to be in a room and just listen to them talk casually. Listening to Grant Morrison talk normally is just an experience.
Yeah. He's amazing. He's an inspiration to listen to him to talk about comics and superheroes.
So, unlike a lot of writers in the superhero business, you dedicated a good bit of your run to Nightwing's romantic relationship with Defacer, and it led to a pregnancy scare. Was there any idea on your part to maybe push that concept, or? Oh, yeah. Yes. I originally pitched it as, I don't know if this was a good idea, but this is what I originally pitched it as. I wanted to pitch it as that, that she actually was pregnant, and I wanted to do a story where, they had to have the conversation about abortion, that they had to have this, she wasn't ready and their relationship was too early. And, obviously it would have been incredibly controversial and probably would have got us on Fox News. So I don't know if it would have been worth it. But every sort of young guy I know, or every guy I know now who's in his 40s had an experience like that when they were younger, where,
you had a scare and you said, should we keep it? Is this something we should do? Are we ready for this? By the way, I live by the train, so that's the Chicago L rolling by.
The train tracks are on fire. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. But I thought that might be an interesting angle. And I didn't want to do this sort of trope of like, Grayson's baby and something ridiculous would come out of that. But I thought, that there was a worthwhile conversation to be had about that sort of thing. And if my treatise on the book was, he's living life as a young guy. And so all the problems and drama that goes with that would be just extrapolated into a superhero world. I thought that would totally follow.
Yeah, I kind of wish the book was like that, because that sounds like a very important, not like a very special issue, but things like that, I think track well with me, because I like seeing boundaries kind of pushed and real world questions getting asked. But wow, that So this one's kind of hard to follow up with. If you had a group of characters to star in It's Always Sunny in Bloodhaven, who would you choose?
Sunny in Bloodhaven. Well, so by the definition of that TV show, everyone in this particular version has to be a total dick, right? They're all assholes.
Everyone's assholes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, then your Frank in this story is definitely Blockbuster, because he's just, and your Charlie's got to be. I guess I got to use some of the runoffs here, because so I put in. Well, I put DeFacer in there, but because she's kind of a dick too, but she's, also got a heart of gold. Let's see. What else is in Bloodhaven that I can use? And Dick has got to be the Charlie, right? He's like, he's kind of tormented and kind of broken, but he's sweet.
Him and Blockbuster playing Nightcrawlers.
Yeah. I mean, basically I already did this. This is what I
You wrote this. This is your book.
I already did, yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually is perfect setup for something I know Jake is super excited to ask.
Out of all the runoffs, who was your favorite?
I don't know. Let's see. Probably Mouse, I guess, or probably Mouse, I think. Just because I don't know. I like the idea that she was trained by Catwoman. And that, she was the sort of, hacker and would come across as like this stereotypical nerd, but she kind of wasn't. I don't know. Let's see. I liked Stallion too, and Thrill Devil was kind of fun. I liked his design a lot. They were all, I have affection for all of them. No one's used them, and that's kind of a bummer. And I think that's one of the, that's obviously an indication of how well something landed, because if nobody uses it, you're like, well, I guess that didn't work. Mm-hmm. But I thought it had some, it told you something about Dick Grayson as a character more than if he had just had a bunch of villains he beat up on all the time. That he was trying to help them be better, and that they could act as this sort of connection to the underworld, which is a new underworld that he didn't necessarily understand. And my take on it was going to be that Bloodhaven's crime worked much different than Gotham's, whereas Gotham was this place of all these different factions and crazy supervillains who just blow stuff up. That Bloodhaven was very much like Baltimore and The Wire. Like, it was just an economy for a certain subsection of the city. That this was just the system that they knew how to do. That's why there was like the crime market and all that sort of stuff. I try to throw like a lot of crazy ideas in there about that sort of idea to make it distinct from Gotham. And I think in the end, what you always have is people just make it shitty Gotham. Like, that's just what in the end.
I feel like you did make it easier for him to assimilate in that book than Chuck Dixon did when he did the Bloodhaven stuff. So I think that you were aiming for really worked. Yeah,
and I think Chuck's a brilliant writer, and his run was obviously really influential to me. But like, I hated the idea that Bloodhaven was worse than Gotham, because the idea has to be, that Gotham made Batman, and only a place like that could make Batman. So
there's no bigger shithole.
Yeah, if it was like it was corrupt, right? It was like it was, and I also kind of always hated and I still hate this, is that in superhero comics, cities are always shitholes, and there's never you never see a reason why anyone would live there. And I thought Bloodhaven should have, there's a lot of reasons to live there. It had culture, and it had people doing cool things, and there was connections and all that sort of this stuff. Like, yes, it had this alternative economy that led to conflict, but people were trying. So I thought it just can't be shittier Gotham. Like that's the same story. I didn't want to do the same story.
Just the term alternative economy just reminds me of the fact that all of my my anthropology classes and being just north of Baltimore.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, next question. This is another little favorite one. Who's your favorite Spiral operative?
Oh, Huntress, Helena, for sure. Yeah, I love her. She is my favorite. That particular version of her I really liked. I wish we could have done more with that, because the reason they had to do that was at the time there was already a Huntress, and it was Helena Wayne, because she was in the other like JSA kind of book, the Society book, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So we, and so I thought that was kind of cool, like a different version of Helena Bertinelli, who wasn't necessarily Huntress. She wasn't a vigilante. She wasn't, but she had a lot of the same cool character background stuff that was so great about Huntress.
Mm-hmm.
But now she's Huntress, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I have to follow something on that, which has kind of been my burning question. So remember when you wrote that beautiful boy, Professor Pig?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was, I think it was like a one-off line about him being a former Spiral agent, or did I read that wrong?
No, that's true. That's Grant made that up. I did not make that up.
So that was in Grant's run?
Yeah.
Why doesn't he just get his own book for that? Can you?
I think it was in
Agent of Spiral.
There was it was in the. I'm trying to think. It was Batman Incorporated. It was the one that Cameron Stewart drew that took place in the academy with the girls' school, and they showed the teacher. It was the son of Pig. Was Professor Pig's kid was like Laszlo, I think, or maybe Laszlo was Professor Pig, but he was doing like a class and he was showing them like pain resistance and stuff. So that was just a Grant idea that we went with.
I guess I got to go back and read Ink because I just love. He was wild. He's just wild.
Yeah, and there's a lot, and that was the thing that we kind of always said about working with Grant stuff, was that there were so many ideas in there that he just throw out and then wouldn't have time to pick up on. That Tom and I joked like you could make an entire book just out of discarded Grant idea, and so we did.
Yeah, there's just so many.
That Grant Morrison. Other than Dick Grayson, who is your favorite member of the Bat family?
Oh man, let's see.
That's like Sophie's choice. I know.
I mean, Batgirl. I think I always loved her.
Which one?
Which one? That's a good question.
Oh, Barbara. Yeah, Barbara.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I grew up with the idea of a Batgirl who was Commissioner Gordon's daughter, and I always thought, there was something great about that, because she didn't do it because she was tormented and dark and didn't lose anybody. She did it because she had this sort of affection for the idea, and that she was smart and plucky and just did it. I just thought that was cool.
Okay. All right. I'll let you get away with that. I won't judge you for it.
Favorite character you've created or co-created?
I mean, I'll go with my meal ticket, Cassie Hack from Hack Slash, because she's paid a lot of bills for me over the years. So, so I like her quite a bit.
That's 100% the best answer.
Yeah. Did you enjoy writing Nightwing as Dick No, Dick is Nightwing as Grayson more.
You got Dick on your mind, Jake.
Grayson by a long shot. It was just a lot more freeing, and there was a lot more options. There was a lot less that had already been done, and I kind of felt like doing Rebirth was always, I understood exactly why it was intended to be done, but it always kind of felt like a step backwards, where I felt like Grayson was like moving forward and doing new things and like adding to the big mythos. And I like the idea that you can do with Nightwing, but like I didn't want to do Daredevil. Like it's always sort of been Nightwing was just Daredevil without the cool powers and the lawyer background. So like if we're gonna do Nightwing, I felt like we had to do a different take on it. It couldn't be just Frank Miller's Daredevil. It had to be something new, and it was harder to do that way. Whereas like I think Grayson set itself up for so many possibilities where I didn't feel a lot of conflict or difficulty getting stories to go.
So I'll ask the next one. I know you had a run on Green Lanterns, and I was curious of who was more fun for you to write, Jessica Cruz or Simon Baz?
Oh, Jessica, for sure. I can relate to Jessica a lot more than Simon.
Same.
Yeah, Simon's cool, and I like the idea of Simon, but I think like Simon is like, he's a cool guy, and it was hard for me to parse the cool guy. But I get Jessica. I mean, I have anxiety disorder, so it's really nice to be able to write that comfortably and not feel, like I was faking it, because I could just put in things out of my own situation, my own life and that would get a story. It's always nice to write things you don't have to research, because research takes time. And if it's just your lived experience, like, oh, you're saving hours and hours. So
thanks, anxiety.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a really good character with, who's important now. And I always kind of felt like, that particular book should have been written for a new audience. It should have been written for women. It should have been more kind of concentrated on newer fans. And you always kind of felt the pushback from the older fans again. It was like that it wasn't.
Oh, Green Lantern fans.
Yeah, and Green Lantern fans are like some of the most old school Green Lantern fans or comic fans there are, which is great. And, but I'm not that guy. So I think that part was hard for me. Like, and I didn't want to mess around. Jeff had pretty much crushed it with the War of the Spectrums and all those. And I just, he loves that stuff, and he did it so well, and I don't care that much about it. So like, it was much harder for me to approach the story from the angles that I think may have been what the hardcore fans desired most. So I approached it like it was basically sort of in a Spider-Man template kind of book, right? It was about, people who have these extraordinary powers, but they're trying to live their difficult lives, and kind of picking up the idea that comes from Spider-Man, which is when he's Spider-Man, he's got this different set of problems than he does when he's Peter Parker, but both have these sets of problems. And I just wanted to do a thing where, when they're Green Lanterns, they're like respected and everybody gets out of their way and there's, they're trusted. And then when they come home to Earth, they're the weirdos and the outcasts and the untrusted. So that was my take on it, and I really liked the characters, and I would definitely do it again. But it's a hard book to get people to care about.
Yeah, we both related to Jessica the same way. It was like when I read that, I think I texted Jake right after I finished the first arc. I was like, "Holy shit! Why didn't I read this before?" Jessica Cruz is the best Green Lantern.
Yeah, and Sam did a lot of good stuff with her too. I mean, Sam come from the same. Sam is like no anxiety. He's like the coolest, chillest dude on earth. So he did some really good stuff with her as far as like her relations to her sister and her family and her and Simon. And I was just picking up that stuff and then adding the sort of, the lived in experience of being someone who's always trying to find a new drug to combat their generalized anxiety.
Yeah, I feel that. So we've come to the end of our written questions, but is there anything that you always hope someone asks you on a podcast that you can talk about that you don't normally get to talk about?
So, oh man, I don't know. I mean, let me see.
It's a hard one, right?
Well, I mean, like no one really ever asked me about working, what it's like to work in comics. I guess is always interesting to me that people love the stories, but people aren't really super curious about how it works, like how you get hired or any of that sort of stuff, or how you get paid, or if you don't get paid, or if you get insurance, or any of that. You know what I mean? Like that stuff that people don't ever ask me about. That I'm always curious as to why they don't.
So I am into all that stuff, and I really wanted to ask, but it kind of felt like rude, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm inviting you to that it's okay. And part of it for me is I think there's a tendency for people, sometimes people don't understand why things don't work out the way they think they should. Like why isn't there, like all these questions I think that sometimes fans see from the outside that they, why doesn't it work this way? Or why isn't this person on this book? Or why isn't, there more diversity? Or why isn't there's all these things, and that I'm always curious, they don't ask, well, is it because of the business of comics?
So, all right, I got one more then. How do you get paid if you're on a series? How does that structure work? If you don't have to be specific, whatever publisher. I'm just always curious how it works for the artist or the writer, because from what I understand, it's not mucho grande dollars.
Well, I mean, it depends, I guess. So the way that you're hired is that usually when you start at a company, you'll start at some very low position, which is usually like doing like a tryout. So it's like a anthology story or annual or something like that. And when you get hired in that situation, the editor will go and establish a rate. And establishing a rate is very important in this business, because once you establish a rate, if you want to get a raise, you have to go and sort of ask for and petition to change your rate. And it's as far as Marvel and DC are concerned, their accounting and stuff makes it so it's a huge pain in the ass to set up a rate and to put someone into the system and to add a W-9 and to set up your direct to pay. So they don't want to do it. So once you get that established, I mean, that's a big deal, because they just added you, which means that you might have future work there if you don't fuck this up. But once it's set up, that's kind of your deal. So when you get asked to pitch, it's usually you get usually asked to pitch. There's very infrequently that you just send something off. So you get, and they have bake-offs most of the time. So it'll be they'll ask 2 or 3 people, unless they have a very specific idea in mind. They'll ask 2 or 3 people to come up with pitches, and then you pitch, and then you get accepted to a series, and then your rate is set. And then once you're working, on a monthly basis, you get a set of deadlines. So usually, most of the time in superhero comics from Marvel and DC, you get hired for 6 issues at a time. Not always, but usually it's roughly that way. Sometimes you'll get a continuation contract, which says that you'll stay on it for 12 to 18 issues. So you do every time you turn in a script based on the deadline given to you, they're sent back an invoice contract from the publisher that you sign that goes out to their accounting, and generally speaking, you get paid between 2 and 3 weeks from when you turn the script in. Or your final pages. Usually in art, you get paid about halfway through, 11 pages or 10 pages, and then you get sent a check for that, and then you get another one when you complete it. And then at the end of every 2 quarters, they actually at DC and Marvel, it might be every quarter now that I think about it. They go through and do a royalty count, and so you get over a certain number of issues sold, you get paid a percentage of the total profits. So if you're in a huge book that sells a lot of copies, you get a big royalty. If you are on a book that doesn't sell shit, you get no royalty. So the idea, that makes people sort of fight for the big books is that the royalties can be more than you got paid the first time. Whereas there are certainly opportunities for you to never, ever make any more money on a book again.
Wow.
So there you go. That's the question nobody ever asked me.
I just didn't want to, like, you don't want to put somebody on the spot just in case somebody listens to it, and
I think it's important because we're all freelancers. So, like, I don't get, if I don't work, I don't get a paycheck. If I don't, if I also don't, like, have things lined up, I can go weeks without, before, because if it takes 2 weeks for Marvel and DC, sometimes it takes 3 months, up to 6 months with some publishers before they pay you. So sometimes you're waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm waiting on a check now for a job I did in early February. Not for Marvel and DC. They're much better at paying, but yeah, in comics, like, it can be all over the place.
Yeah, I've heard the U word a lot in the past couple of days.
Yeah.
It's just I love the industry. It just scares me how some people get treated. But other than that, do you have anything coming up that you want to talk about? Any books, anything like that?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm working on Bloodshot for Valiant. That's a really good company to work for. Speaking of companies that pay on time. But I'm doing Bloodshot with them. I just had the free comic book day book come out, and the series starts in September. I was working on issue 5 today, so we're way ahead. And then I have, let's see, I can't talk about the DC one yet. I have Dark Red. And I have Dark Red from Aftershock, which is a vampire story. It's kind of a modern political parable.
I have both issues sitting on my shelf waiting for me.
Okay. I'm real proud of it. I think you will like it. And I have 2 Marvel things coming out of a Deadpool story and a what's her name? The Secret Warps. I have a story in the annual. What Weapon Hex story? That one's pretty cool.
Is that the one where Scarlet Witch and Lara are one?
Yep.
That should be awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty fun, and it's really well drawn. So that one's real cool. And what else do I got coming up, man? I got all kinds of crap. I never remember to think of all the things.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Are you still doing Swamp Thing?
Oh, yes. There you go. Yeah, Swamp Thing.
I got you.
For Walmart 100-page giant stories. I'm doing that for DC Comics. That's real fun. Swamp Thing is one of my personal favorites. So
same, and you are one of the personal favorites as well, which is why it sucks that I can't find it anywhere.
They are going to eventually do those as collector's editions.
I'm so hyped.
Good.
I don't know the exact details, but they'll eventually. Because they just did. I think they're doing Tom's and Brian's stuff. I think for direct market. So yeah, so that was fun, and I can't. What else am I doing?
What can't you say?
Yeah, I'm not sitting in front of my schedule board, so I can never remember
Is the series you're working? The series you're working on right now, creator owned, or is it with a company?
Oh, I have another creator owned story that I'm coming out with, and then that one that I'm really proud of. That one should get announced pretty soon, I think. And then I have another DC project coming up, and what else? Some other stuff. So yeah, I always got stuff, I guess.
Well, yeah, you have to, or you're not getting paid.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're out into the winter hellscape of Chicago.
I'll go lay on the racks on the track because it used to be fire. Yeah,
you should get to stay warm. Where can
you live so close?
Where can people find you?
I'm on that awful guilty pleasure of mine Twitter at Hackin' Tim Seeley. You can find me on Instagram, and I'm on. I have my website is timseeleycreative.com, and timseeleyart.blogspot.com, and I think that's most of them that I would care to share.
Oh, there's some secret ones you can't share.
Well, there's Facebook, but you don't want to. I hate that site, so nobody needs to there. I'm not going to talk to you there. I hate that site.
Fair enough.
All right, so we will catch you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening.